afternoon and welcome to Impact Community Action, Speak Up and Speak Out. We'd like to thank our friends at PNC and the Columbus Foundation to bring to you once again Stephanie Starks, licensed clinician from Starks Counseling. She is the founder and CEO. Stephanie is with Starks Counseling and Consultation Services. She works to provide hope and healing to children, couples, and families within the greater Columbus area and beyond. It is her goal to provide a warm, supportive, and non-judgmental therapeutic environment in which people can explore and grow. And she believes that her clients are their own best advocates, and simply it is her job to equip them with the knowledge and skills they need to do so effectively. Without further ado, to talk about trauma and COVID and our schools, Stephanie Stark.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Kay. How's everyone doing? Welcome. Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. We are on week 3 of the series, Speak Up, Speak Out. And this week we're going to talk about virtual schools and COVID-19, how to help yourself or your child heal and build resiliency. A little bit about me. If you guys attended workshop 1 or 2, you heard some of this, but I am an independently licensed therapist. Trauma is my area of expertise. And if you think about trauma like an umbrella, under that umbrella could be things like exposure to domestic violence, community violence. Without question, what our community has been dealing with COVID-19 would be considered a shared or community traumatic experience. But also under that umbrella could be things like struggling with depression, anxiety, irritability, poor sleep, that kind of stuff. I am a graduate of the Columbus Alternative High School, COS. I have been a social worker for more than 18 years. I'm also a graduate of the Ohio State University. Actually, I earned my master's at Ohio State. Thank you for the clap, but my undergraduate degree is from Ohio University, so my loyalty is split. And I have been treated in the past myself for anxiety and trauma. If you could imagine, if my area of specialty is trauma, I absorb a lot of people's experiences, and when I was really new in the field, it started to impact me, although I loved back then what I was doing. So I had to learn a lot of the skills for myself that I am now teaching other people. And my family has benefited quite a bit over the years, myself personally as well, from some of the services that are offered by Impact. So I was super excited when Ms. Kay reached out to me and asked me to do a series of workshops. By the end of this workshop, you will understand the pros and cons of virtual learning, the impact of virtual learning on younger people as well as college students, and how to manage the stress of virtual learning. So let's talk about it. By a show of hands, who is in school right now? Okay. By a show of hands, who has a child that's in school right now? Okay. By a show of hands, who has a niece, nephew, neighbor, cousin, child that attends church that's in school right now? And is anyone in this room actually parenting a child that's doing virtual learning right now? Okay. So I'm sure people at home, whether you're in college yourself, you could be in college and you have a child that's in school. All of us have kind of had this shared traumatic experience of what it's been like to switch from kids going to school every day, parents going to school every day, we're going to work every day, or parents going to work every day, and boom, in the blink of an eye, I think it was the 3rd week of March of last year, everything had to be remote and virtual. So that in and of itself was a shared traumatic experience. How have some of you coped with that transition? Sir?
Well, I have one in college,
Mm-hmm.
one in Columbus, that's virtual.
Mm-hmm.
The college, one in college was on the football team, and he had tested for COVID, and he was in quarantine for a couple of weeks, and that was very depressing to him.
Mm-hmm.
His grades dropped,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to encourage him every day. Being isolated, not knowing where you got it from.
Mm-hmm.
With the football team, the coaches are very strict on where you go and where you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't go anywhere. So
And he was frustrated, like, how did I get it?
I mean, he was literally, matter of fact, when they told him to pack for a week,
Mm-hmm.
he only packed for a day. Because he just knew he was going to be fine.
Because he did everything right.
Did everything right. So luckily, the football team wasn't doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he got through it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a struggle.
Mm-hmm. And you had to give him that extra support.
Yeah, he's 500 miles away. So
Mm-hmm.
thank God we have a good friend of mine that's down there, band director,
Mm-hmm.
been in college. And he checked on him all the time. The coaches checked on him. My wife and I checked on him. So we helped him through that. Once he got through that, then he was able to come home for a break.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's back in person, doing extremely well, because it was like a total depression.
Mm-hmm. It's like a gut punch.
Yeah, he came off of a 4.0 first semester, dropped
And
off,
his grades plummeted.
plummeted.
So how did it impact you, watching your son go through this?
It was as if I was going through it too,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Why we were like helpless, so we just prayed about it, prayed with him,
Mm-hmm.
got him through it, and talked. Now he's back on top of the world.
But as he was going through it, you and your wife were going through it as well, right there with him.
So,
Yes.
and then my youngest son, he does better in person,
Mm-hmm.
but he's the kind of child that if you kind of leave him alone, he'll get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So
He's self-directed.
he's kind of self-directed, and he can do his work virtually on his phone
Mm-hmm.
if you don't bother.
You're lucky, because most kids are not, as independent and focused.
Yeah, but to getting to that point, I had to, my wife and I had to, he had class, they had clock. So we had to make sure he was on his phone in the class. And he did go through a period where you have to clock the log in within 3 minutes of the report time. And I was always getting these unexcused absent emails because he would not log in on time. So now he's got to the point, he's a senior, doesn't have much time left, so now he's back on track. He had a 4.19, then it dropped to a 3.6.
So you have a younger child who also gets really good grades, but you noticed a marked change in performance when he was forced to do virtual school.
Because he likes that in-person contact with his fellow.
Absolutely.
And I think the thing that saves him is he's also he's the point guard for a basketball team.
Okay.
So he's able to go to practice
He's,
basically every day.
yes.
So that has taken the place of him being in school with them during the day.
And that's so important. We're going to talk about that. So you mentioned two things that he had that probably helped him rebound quickly. He was still able to socialize because he was on the basketball team, and he got regular physical activity.
That's right.
Yes. And he had parents that was not going to let him fall off. So actually, that's three things. Yes. So, young lady, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Emily?
So, Emily, you're in college right now.
Yes.
So what has your experience been like going from in-person to virtual?
Yeah, it hasn't been too bad. I have to say that OSU is extremely accommodating as far as like grades and leniency on in a different virtual learning environment. But yeah, it's been difficult in the sense that sometimes you feel like it is harder to absorb the information. It is harder to sit there and pay attention. Because, I mean, the classes can be 3 hours long. And even if you get a break, sometimes you're not actually taking a break like what you would in person class. So, yeah, I feel like that's the hardest part.
Yes.
Staying focused.
Yes, staying focused. So did you notice a change in your mood or energy level or sleep habits?
Yes, yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Definitely. I noticed that I was staying up very late. But also, I mean, I still got up early. So it was almost like I always felt tired, but I couldn't sleep. And then just mood was definitely down. I assume because of no interaction, in-person interaction. So, and I just completely go to school full time, so I don't work either. So
Yes.
my interaction was really limited.
Oh, absolutely. Do you feel like you've bounced back or gotten adjusted to a new rhythm?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it took some time. And now that I'm here in my internship, is where I can see the biggest change in my mood. I'm out, I'm meeting new people, I'm talking to people, which, you know, I'm a semi-extrovert, so I feel like I definitely need that.
Yes. We have no idea how much we need people until we're forced to be isolated. So, you know, whether you are a college student, whether you're a parent who's helping a child with virtual learning, without question, the last year has been extraordinary and traumatic, difficult to adjust. I am not in school and my daughter is an adult. She's not in college. And it was even a transition and struggle for me to go from seeing clients face to face to all virtual sessions. So definitely, I think we all have this shared traumatic experience. So I want to ask you all a question. Why aren't more kids in school right now? Why do you think?
They still feel the same level of engagement. So to them, engagement is kind of like hands-on and there and present. And so having to be on a screen and having to also be self-motivated to get through is not, it's hard when they're isolated.
So what I hear you saying is some kids have not successfully transitioned because they don't have the normal interactions that we all probably took for granted prior to COVID and having to do school online, and not as much socialization, right?
Right, because even when we went home for a short period of time, the biggest social distancing I had to do was from my refrigerator. Like, I always knew it was there.
Yes.
So when I stopped and I wanted to, like, I started out with 72 emails and I worked it down and cleared them out. I'm like, I deserve a snack, you know? And then that snack would turn into like longer time because nobody was really there to say, okay, next task.
Yep. You didn't have a lot of space between you and the refrigerator.
Exactly.
I went
Or
through
not
that
enough
too.
space.
Yes, not enough space. I know, right? And actually, I hear from a lot of my clients, parents are struggling with that right now also. Having your kids home all day means you're responsible as the parent, which is not something a lot of people are used to feeding your child 3 times a day. So a lot of kids would maybe not have a snack in the morning, but would go to school and have breakfast. Then they would have lunch. Then all the parent is responsible for is feeding them in the evening and giving them snacks. Well, boom. All of a sudden, now that parent financially has to feed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids 3 times a day. Do the math on that. That's a lot of money. That's also a lot of time for the parent or parents who have to prepare those meals.
Also would say that one reason is because maybe
Oh, yes. So there are a lot of kids, and I've heard this too from clients, that there are kids who actually want to go to school. They want to go back to school because I guess every school district is different. Some have this hybrid model where you may go to school a couple days, stay home for a couple days, or you may go to school for a week, and then the next week you're at home. And then I think some schools are given the option to do all virtual, and some parents are afraid to send their kids to school for fear that they may get COVID. Because if you can imagine, I have a 7-year-old nephew, and we were talking about COVID a couple weeks ago, and I was like, what is it that you don't like about COVID? And he was like, I can't high-five my friends anymore. I gotta wear a mask all day, Auntie, and it's hot in there, and I don't wanna wear the mask all day, and I can't hug my friends. So you have a lot of kids who are desperate for that, but the parents are thinking about the same thing. How are these kids gonna stop themselves from hugging each other, or high-fiving each other, or sharing food, or sharing drinks, that kind of stuff. So absolutely, you have parents who are really terrified, understandably so, to send their kids to school. So we know that a lot of kids and young people aren't going to school in person because of COVID-19. Who is? I'm not touching it. Yeah, I'm not touching it, but we're on the right one though. Okay. COVID-19 in the Black community. So why should we in particular be concerned and a little more vigilant about taking care of ourselves during COVID? Is because it's impacting our community more than the larger community. So we are more than 4 times as likely to test positive. We are nearly 2 times more likely to be hospitalized, and 1.5 times more likely to be admitted to ICU. Now, when you look at the numbers, I think last time I watched CNN a couple days ago, they said over 400,000 people had died so far due to COVID. But you have to think about the percentage of African Americans in the United States versus how many people are passing away. So in the African American community, statistically, we're dying more often and we're getting sick more often, gravely ill, or possibly passing away than others in the community. So, pros and cons of virtual learning. I figure since we were already talking about, the gloom and doom of COVID-19, I would start with the cons first. So the cons of virtual learning. There are disparities in access to Wi-Fi, access to space, access to meals, and access to computers. You have more families who possibly cannot afford Wi-Fi, don't have access to it. You have more families that live in multi-generational households, or they live in smaller confined spaces. So if you live in a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment and you're having to be home all day, not only you as the parent working, but the children at home doing school, that's a contained space and you have a lot of activity going on. Wait a minute, hold on a second. Access to meals. Again, I talked about this earlier. So financially, there was an immediate impact on families to have to provide more meals for the household. And then we're not even going to talk about how, if I'm a parent and I'm working at home, how am I going to find the time to make these extra meals? Because I have to be logged on to work, and I'm sure these companies are tracking when people are online and doing their work. So that's very stressful. And then access to computers and tablets. I know Columbus City Schools, in my opinion, did a great job providing tablets really early on in this process for kids and families. But then I've heard that there's been all sorts of mishaps happening even with that. Parents losing tablets, tablets being stolen, having kids who are in different grade levels. Maybe the older kids got a tablet, but the younger kids didn't. So how do I complete the work online? And then we have to, be honest, a lot of people aren't tech savvy. I mean, and the crew here at Impact can attest to this. I am not like tech savvy, so I even mess up sending emails to people sometimes. So you have parents at home trying to help their children navigate the virtual learning world, and in some cases, their kids know more about it than they do. Okay, I'm sorry, Tanisha. Somebody had a question?
Yeah, well, Mary just mentioned, she said she knows a woman who had 15 kids from different families and districts. So she was one of the few people within the group that had Wi-Fi. So all the kids would come there to converse.
So how many kids did she actually have that lived with her? But she was like the neighborhood hotspot. Oh, wow. God bless her. And I know that, at least in Columbus City schools, I know that there were companies who were given free Wi-Fi or internet, but then it was also my understanding if you had a balance that was past due, you may not have been able to access those services. So we're going to talk more about that as well. So let's look at the pros. We've talked about the cons, the stress of it, the trauma. What do you all think are some benefits of virtual learning? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Well, parents have a little more control.
Parents have more control. Like oversight.
You get a chance to spend more time with the child.
Yes.
Working.
Spending more time, absolutely.
I'm trying to relate it to my situation because I'm working, so. But there are others I'll think about it here.
Okay.
Come back to you.
Those are some good ones, though. Anyone else?
Safety.
Safety. Talk a little more about that. What do you mean by safety?
You know that you're not forced to go out and potentially expose yourself to COVID-19. So I think it gives people more peace of mind.
Yes, a lot more control over your environment.
Yes.
Absolutely. So what I put down was flexibility. So one of the pros of virtual learning is if there was ever a time that you were a parent and you were sitting at work thinking about your kid and you're like, man, I wish I was home to help my kids with their homework or to pick them up from basketball practice or something like that. Guess what? Thanks to virtual learning and in some cases remote employment, you now have that ability. Be careful what you wish for. Also, safety, we talked about that. You have a more control over your environment and your bubble and your family. You're able to keep them safe. And more family time. So I think this is one of the greatest benefits. I think for all of the clients that I have who in the beginning expressed a lot of stress, distress, trauma, tears about this whole online process, with each client, with each family, I've heard these stories over and over again about, I feel like I've gotten to know my child more. I feel like I've gotten to know my college student more. I'm happy that I'm getting to spend this extra time with my child. Now, and I've even had parents say, now I know what these teachers be talking about when they emailing me and texting me and calling me about my kid. Because, yeah, it's like this child is like difficult to teach, right? So I think there's a great benefit to kind of rediscovering the importance of your nuclear family. So now let's talk about the impact of virtual learning on mental health. And this would be whether you're a college student, whether it's your child. These are some of the impacts of virtual learning on mental health. And if you don't remember anything else from this workshop, please pay close attention to this because Before I went into private practice, I worked at Nationwide Children's Hospital. So I worked a lot with children and families. And I can tell you, it is very difficult to diagnose depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, suicidal urges, self-harm thoughts, self-harm urges with young people, especially when they're like preteen to teenager, because just by their nature, they tend to be a little more secretive and not open up as much to their parents. So please pay attention to some of the impact of virtual learning on mental health. So we have already seen an increase in anxiety and depression because socialization is so critical to young people in their development. In some cases, I feel like it's equally important, as important, if not more important, than their education from kindergarten. They're learning how to get along, how to be good citizens, how to be good people, how to treat people the way they want to be treated. And all of that, like in a flash, was taken away from kids. And if you are a child that lives in a big home and you have a lot of siblings, I would say you're fortunate, but we have a lot of kids out here who are only children, or they're in a blended family. Maybe they have siblings that live in another household and they spend a lot of time alone. That is traumatic for kids, to go from lots of social interactions with adults and kids to like little or none. Increased isolation. So they're forced to be disconnected from society physically. Decreased physical activity. I think this is something that we all struggle with and are trying to figure out. I would say it's as simple as, I think for me, I noticed immediately that I wasn't getting as much steps per day. So I took for granted that even when I didn't go to the gym, the act of me getting up from my desk, walking to the lobby, greeting someone, walking them back to my office, sitting down, walking them back out, and then walking another client back in, those were like thousands and thousands of steps per day that I was picking up, that I was no longer picking up because I was working at home mostly. Feelings of hopelessness. And I think in particular with younger kids, because they don't quite have the sense of time that we do, it feels like forever. 6 months, 8 months feels like a lifetime for little kindergartners, first graders, second graders, third graders. Even the preteens and teens may understand cognitively that this isn't going to go on forever, but I'm sure a lot of them have become frustrated, which is why they have something they call COVID fatigue now, where people are starting to become more laxed with wearing masks and social distancing and staying in their bubbles and using hand sanitizer, because it's like, okay, I didn't think this was going to last forever. Like, I need a break from this. Which this is actually the worst time to take a break from those protocols. But people are getting overwhelmed and tired. And then decreased concentration. So whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, you may struggle with ADHD or ADD, which is going to really make it hard for you to focus and concentrate with virtual learning. It's going to impact your ability to stay focused, to retain information. You have to pay attention to that. So I have a lot of parents who are increasingly frustrated with their children who are in grade school, high school, even who have college students. They're frustrated because they're like, why all of a sudden are you struggling in ways that you've never struggled before? Well, we have to keep in mind that we've all had this traumatic experience and it looks different for everybody and it impacts everyone differently. But one thing I can say across the board, I think everyone's concentration and ability to focus has been impacted. I think somebody said, I think you said that sometimes you struggle with being focused at school if you're at home. Did you say that, or was it Kay? Okay, yes. So I go through the same thing working virtually from home now. It's like I start looking at the kitchen and I'm like, man, I need to start preparing dinner. Well, if I was in my office, I wouldn't be thinking that. I might think I'm hungry, but I'm not actually looking at the kitchen thinking how much time between sessions do I have to put some grilled chicken in the oven. So lots of struggles with concentration and distractions with virtual learning. Tips to lessen distress. Take a breath. So I'm gonna read through these and then I'm gonna go back and talk about them. Take a breath, extend grace, radical acceptance, establish a routine, create a safe space, get moving again, stay connected, laugh, and ask for help. So let's start with the first one, take a breath. Sometimes we just need to close our eyes, taking a deep, deep breath, allowing our diaphragm to expand like a balloon, pause, and just breathe out. So there are times where I'm feeling overwhelmed because I'm going back to back with appointments, and I don't have that little break. Again, the things we take for granted, that time it would take me to go from my desk and say goodbye to one client and escort another one in, guess what? That was a mental break. So I don't have those things. So sometimes all I have time to do is just take a deep breath and blow out. And I'll do that 3 or 4, 5 times at my desk, and then at home, and then boom, I'm ready to transition to the next appointment. So sometimes we just need to stop and take a breath. When we feel overwhelmed by the demands of trying to work from home and dealing with our kids' needs and their virtual learning experience, sometimes before we respond, close your eyes, just take a breath. Because just like we're struggling, our kids are struggling, but it's not going to show up, it's not going to look the same for them. For them, it's just going to look, we're going to think selfishly, honestly, that they're just getting on our nerves or they're being a nuisance. No, they're struggling with this just the same way we are. So sometimes we just got to take a deep breath. 2, extend grace. Extend grace to yourself and to other people. So again, trying to think about what it would be like for us. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm up there. So, but if I had a child at home, I would have to stop and think, man, what would it have been like to be in the 5th grade, the 3rd grade, God forbid, kindergarten, and have to do school online? Sometimes we just have to stop and for a second put ourselves in our kids' shoes, or college student. Wow, what would it be like for me to be in my last year of college and have to do all of my stuff online? Or to be in my last year of high school and all the ceremonies and rituals and experiences that we remember to this day. We have a generation of kids for the next couple of years that are not going to have that experience. So sometimes we really just have to stop and extend each other some grace. And then we got to extend ourselves some grace. We're not going to do everything perfect. You know, nobody went into this COVID experience with a manual saying, hey, in the event of a pandemic, we haven't had one in over 100 years, but just in case it happens, here's the manual on how to handle it. Well, none of us know that, so we have to extend ourselves and each other some grace. Radical acceptance, I love this. So basically, as a therapist, radical acceptance is really just like it is what it is. So at some point, we have to accept that this is our normal now. This is our new normal. And we can, you know, complain about it and huff and puff about it and, you know, talk about how we hate it and, oh, I wish, you know, 2021 would be here. Well, 2021 is here, and I don't know about y'all, but I've been surprised more than once since 2021 started. So, you know, at some point, we just have to radically accept that this is the world we live in right now. This is the life we have to live. It sucks that we have to wear masks all the time. It sucks that we have to grapple with whether or not we want to get the vaccine that's been created for COVID. But this is our reality, and we can't avoid this stuff. We can't just keep complaining about it. We have to deal with it. Radical acceptance. I actually love that principle. Establishing a routine. Now, part of the reason I think young people and kids have struggled so much with changing their routine is adopting a new routine is because they were in the groove with their old routine. It's like they knew what to expect every day. Now, all of a sudden, over the last 9 months or so or year, you know, everything has changed. And all the rules that applied then may not apply now. But guess what? Routines are still important for adults, for kids who struggle with depression, anxiety, OCD, ADHD, ADD. I tell them all the same thing. I don't care how old or young they are. Establish a routine. It gives you a sense of peace. So for instance, sir, you talked about you having to make sure that your son logged in at 8:03 so he wouldn't be considered tardy or absent. That seems like a small thing, but that is training him that you now have a new routine. He's used to getting dressed, leaving the house, getting on the bus, or you dropping him off, walking into school, and then boom, he's on time. Well, now you have to be self-directed. You have to get up. You have to make sure you're still dressed and prepared for school. You have to log in yourself at 8:03. People aren't carrying you to school. So that seems like a small thing, but it's a big adjustment for kids who have been conditioned to a certain way of attending and arriving to school. Same thing with parents. You know, you may be used to getting dressed, dropping your kids off, going to the office. Well, now you got to do everything you would normally do in the house. And then you got to go possibly to this small little space, your kitchen table or in your bedroom, and voila. You got to think like, okay, I am now at work. I'm now in the office. That's a huge transition. I don't know about you, but when I first started working at home, I was yawning a lot because I was so used to going to my office and knowing physically when I walked into my home, mentally my mind transitions and I start to calm down and I start to get sleepy because my mind knows once I hit my apartment, okay, you off work, it's time to relax. Well, if I'm working from home, my mind is still doing that, but guess what? I'm still at the office. Technically, I'm still at work, so I'm yawning. I'm like, whew, I had to change the light bulbs in the house just so I can have more brightness so that my mind and body could adjust to having to work from home now. Creating a safe space. This is easier said than done. Some families don't have the benefit of living in a 3, 4, 5 bedroom house with 1.5 baths or 2.5 baths. Some families don't have the benefit of just having 2 children. They may have 5 or 6. And to your point, Tanisha, they may have kids in the neighborhood come into their house because they recognize that particular house as a safe space, a space that has some basic things that they need in order to be successful in school. So guess what? Wherever you live, however big or small it is, create a safe space. I have a client who, when the person meets with me for session, that person has cleaned out a closet and still has clothes in it, but cleaned out this little corner of a closet where the person can have a break, some peace. Close that door, now that person is ready for their counseling session. I have a client whose daughter created a safe space underneath the basement steps. And she decorated and got cute little pillows down there. And that's her safe space where she goes to get her work done. And it works for her. So again, whatever space you're working with, try to create safe spaces, not just for your kids who are doing virtual learning, but if you are working from home, create it for you too. Get moving again. A lot of people struggle with, you know, do I go to the gym? Do I not go to the gym? I'm afraid to get COVID. I don't know how well they clean the equipment. Well, guess what? There's all sorts of, if you go online or Google, you can find all sorts of videos that will allow you to work out. I said this last week, so I'm giving another plug to Mike Nicholson, Hip Hop Fitness. He is a hip hop fitness instructor. He has free sessions on YouTube that you can Google and put those videos on and work out for 15 minutes because I'm gonna be honest, his workouts are intense. So I usually do the first 15, 20 minutes. For him, that's just warm up. But for me, it's like that's about all I got. But you can put that video on, and guess what? It's not just a break for you. It could be a break or a transition from your kids' day. So when you're finished with work, the kids are finished with school, throw on Mike Nicholson, Hip Hop Fitness on YouTube, do that 15, 20 minutes, and that can be the way that you and your family transition from school work day to family time, or dinner and family time. Stay connected. Again, I think what has kept me up at night worrying about our young people is the limited socialization. And I think I worry about it for adults as well, but more so for kids. So it's important to allow your kids to stay connected to their friendship groups, whether it's the kids in class, kids in the neighborhood, family members. You know, if you're not comfortable with certain family members coming over, create virtual opportunities. It's my understanding, again, I'm not super tech savvy, Tanisha, but it's my understanding that there's apps out there where you can play virtual games with people in other locations. You can watch movies with people in other locations. I was thinking about doing that with me and my daughter. So there's ways to help your young people stay connected to the people that matter to them. Laugh. Laughter is good for the soul. And I also say, my grandmother used to say sometimes she would laugh to keep from crying. You know, sometimes during COVID, we may have to laugh to keep from having a nervous breakdown with all the stresses and all the things we're dealing with as parents and grandparents and family members and friends. So laughing, again, YouTube, you can find funny cat videos, dog videos. Maybe a part of family time could be to watch, you know, a comedy movie or something that maybe you thought was a good movie in the past that was funny, and, you know, family time. Watch those funny movies. Last but not least, ask for help. Please, if you feel like you, your young adult student who's in college, your teenager who's in high school, your middle school student, your young person, if you're noticing changes in their mood, in their attitude, in their demeanor, in their appetite, in their sleep patterns, if they're isolating even more than they're already isolating being at home, have a conversation with them. Hey, what's going on with you? What can I do to help you? And don't be afraid to reach out for help, whether it's a therapist, another family member that's trusted by that child, a principal, teacher, clergy. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Now, here are a list of resources that I found online for Columbus City Schools. Again, I understand this does not apply to everyone who's watching. You may have a child in a different school district, or you may be a young person that's in college. But there are some resources with Columbus City Schools, a remote learning guide, digital resources at home, which will give you a list of apps that your kids could use to supplement their education, kind of give them some like tutoring based on what they've already learned. And then there's an organization called CAP for Kids. They have a lot of resources, and they also offer free tutoring and assistance with homework. So for you parents who are like me, and the math looks different now, and you wouldn't be able to help your kid if you wanted to, Cap City for Kids may be an organization that you can link with to get your kids help with math or English, anything like that. There's also some remote learning centers. I just listed a few that I know of, but they're, again, if you're in Columbus City Schools, I know they have a list of resources. Boys and Girls Club, Columbus Public Libraries, YMCA, several local churches in the Black community are offering remote learning centers where you get free Wi-Fi. They have people on hand to help and give tutoring, that kind of stuff. And they offer it during the day. So if you are a parent that unfortunately is not able to be home with all of your kids the entire day, you may be able to take your lunch break and take your kids to one of these remote learning centers for the second half of your day so they can get a couple of hours of tutoring and supervision and assistance with their work. You pick them up on your way home from work. Now, for people who are young people or adults who are in college, Most college campuses have a student services or disability services, which will have a list of resources for you to get tutoring, to get help if you need special accommodations for test taking, that kind of stuff. Because again, everybody doesn't learn well independently in a remote learning type of environment. Most colleges have those sort of services. I am also a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and I know that there are African American fraternities and sororities here in Columbus that are offering tutoring services. So Facebook would be a great way to tap into those resources. Also, if you have family members and friends who are in various fraternities and sororities, there are a lot of them out there who are offering, different chapters are offering tutoring services. Definitely look into that. And all of this stuff is free. So now I want to ask everybody, what's one thing you all can do differently today to either help yourself or help your children with remote learning? Something that you didn't maybe consider before today's workshop.
Well, I kind of considered it before, but be a little more patient. Putting myself in their situation. Because we all were 1 year old at the time. We've
Yes.
never been in this COVID-driven society. And each day is a learning process.
Yes.
Because no one has ever experienced this in our lifetime.
Never.
So as a result, you've got to try, like, have the grace,
Yes.
have more understanding, more patience.
I love it. I love that. Yes. Patience, grace, understanding. Anybody else? Is there something that maybe you're going to try now that you haven't tried before?
Yeah, I think I am going to definitely try to create a safe space for myself. I think I don't really have that now, like carved out for myself. So then it just leads to a lot more like distractions.
Yes. And it's possible. Let me tell you how easy it is. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. So I had an office all of last year. But going into 2021, it didn't make sense for me to continue to pay the money I was paying for these 2 office spaces for myself and whoever was working for me or an intern. And I made the jump to work from home in 2021. And all my friends were like, don't do it. Don't do it. You live in a 1-bedroom, it's going to drive you crazy. I bought a desk. I bought this huge picture that looks like a bay window. And outside that window is a picture of the ocean. So it's a large poster that sits right in front of my desk on the wall, because I'm facing the wall, right? So every day when I go to work, guess what? I got an ocean view. And can I tell you, I know that sounds really simplistic, that poster was like $16. And it gives me such a sense of calm. And it also tells my brain when I'm facing that wall, it's work time. At the end of the day, I shut my computer off, I push my chair, and when I turn my back away from that poster, guess what? The day is over. So something that small has created a really calm and peaceful space for me, and it's very little. Like very little space. So it's not going to take a lot for you to find a space and make it work for you. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Anybody else? My tech crew?
I can say for me, we were talking about this in the chat. My daughter, she was doing daycare at home for a little bit.
How old is your daughter?
She's 4 now.
4, okay.
And she was just like acting out of nowhere, and I'm like, what is her problem? But I realized, my grandma was like, well, you're not the only person that's stuck at home. Like,
Yes.
you gotta understand she had a routine,
Mm-hmm.
and now she doesn't. So you need to, as the adult, like create that routine for her, just like she would be at school.
Routine is important. And extend her grace, because guess what? At 4 years old, she doesn't have the emotional language to articulate to you, Mom, this feels different. I don't like this. I miss all my friends whose names I don't know, but they all my friends. Because you know how 4-year-olds are. Yes, good for you. Routines are important, extending grace, and some days are going to be better than others. Some days your kids are just going to get on your nerves, and there's nothing that anybody is going to be able to say to you. There's no app that is going to fix that. But guess what? Every day you wake up, go to sleep and wake up, there's another opportunity to do it right. So again, extending yourself grace is important. So again, if some of these things have resonated with you, maybe indicators that someone is struggling with depression or anxiety, you've noticed changes in their sleep, their appetite, they're a little more irritable, they're a little more isolated. You get a sense from conversation or lack of conversation that they may be feeling hopeless, and this goes on for more than a couple days or a couple weeks, like maybe you're into a month or two of this happening, you definitely want to think about finding a therapist. Here are some ways you can find a therapist: contacting your insurance company, checking on Psychology Today, which is a website, and I love it because you can actually put in your preferences. If you're looking for somebody younger, older, male, female, black, white, Latino, you can put in your preferences and find someone also that accepts your insurance or maybe has a sliding fee scale because you don't have insurance. You can request a referral from your primary care physician. Also, talk to friends, family for recommendations. I really think you can never go wrong if you go talk to somebody that somebody you love and care about talks to and they speak highly of. Other community resources, I've shared these over the last 2 weeks. I want to share them again. If you have an emergency mental health crisis, you can contact Access, NetCare Access. If your child is having a mental health crisis, you can contact Nationwide Children's Hospital Youth Crisis Line. Both of those numbers, NetCare and Nationwide, those are 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week numbers. There's an adult suicide prevention hotline, teen suicide prevention hotline. If you or someone you know is in a volatile relationship and you feel like you are at risk of being harmed, you or your children, or you have a family member who you think is at risk of being harmed or in an abusive relationship, you can contact Choices Domestic Violence Shelter. Also, Franklin County Children's Services. So, I used to work at Franklin County Children's Services. I feel like they have a really bad rap. People assume that they want, you know, when Children's Services gets involved, it's like they're going to take your kids. Children's Services actually does not want to take your kids. They actually financially can't afford to take every child that might be at risk. They're really about unifying families. They have something called Family in Need of Services, FINS. You can actually call the hotline, and if you or a family member that you know needs help with any sort of resources, food, help with utilities, help with rent, you can contact Franklin County Children's Services, and they will get you linked to the services you need without having an open case. I want to thank you all for joining me today. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Does anyone? Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone at home have any questions? Tanisha, any questions pop up? All right, so we have one more workshop to facilitate. Yes. Next week, workshop number 4, Mental Health and the Winter Blahs. So next week, I'm going to talk a lot about what happens sometimes for people. It could be temporary. It may not be clinical depression, but during the fall and winter months, you may notice a change in your mood and energy and mindset. So we're going to talk about that next week. Mental health and the winter blahs, next Friday at 1 o'clock. Thank you.